This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian, and I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
So prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide if the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because this film is lit. Well, this was certainly a thing that exists. It's Slapstick of Another Kind, and this film is lit. Well, welcome back to This Film is Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books, although I don't know if that title or if that sentence necessarily applies in this instance, because I do not think that I would call this a movie. I mean, it is a movie. It is structured.
It is certainly on film.
Yep.
And
that's about all it's got.
It is feature length.
Yes.
So
it's, good Lord, I'm sorry for anybody who watched this movie along with us. I'm so sorry. If you didn't watch it, good, don't. But we're going to give you a little bit of a summary so you know at least a little bit of what we're talking about in our summary segment. Let me sum up.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
So the book, Slapstick by Kurt Vonnegut, follows the story of Wilbur Swain and, to a lesser extent, his twin sister Eliza. Wilbur and Eliza were born very large and very ugly and are geniuses when they can work together, but are of pretty average intelligence when they're apart. Wilbur and Eliza are eventually separated because their parents are afraid that their relationship is incestuous. Wilbur goes on to become a doctor, while Eliza is stuck in a care facility for several years. Wilbur eventually becomes president of the United States, but the U.S. is late in the process of crumbling. He enacts a plan to give everyone artificial extended families by issuing new middle names to every citizen. The plan goes over well, and when the nation is no longer a nation anymore, people faction themselves off by their artificial families. Wilbur lives in the ruins of New York City, where they have antidotes to the two epidemics that have killed off most people. This novel is all over the place, and I genuinely don't know how to summarize it.
Fascinating. Here's the movie. Slapstick of Another Kind follows the story of Wilbur and Eliza Swain. Wilbur and Eliza were born very large and very ugly, and their parents were convinced by their doctor, Dr. Frankenstein, to abandon the children to be raised and studied in his special home. Meanwhile, China has utilized big brain power to create shrinking technology and has shrunken down their entire nation and cut off relations with the rest of the world. They also have a very intense interest in the Swain children, as they think they have potential to be geniuses and invent more stuff or something. I'm not sure. 15 years later, the Swains' parents come to visit and check in on their children, initially perceived to have intellectual disabilities that will require constant care for the rest of their lives. Wilbur and Eliza reveal that they're actually big brain geniuses when they are together and have been just acting stupid because they thought that's what they were supposed to do, as it's implied at this point that they may not actually be human, ? They are eventually separated because their parents are afraid their relationship is incestuous and that they're both lost causes. Wilbur is sent to a military school and Eliza remains at the doctor's house. Both are miserable without the other, and eventually Eliza escapes to rescue Wilbur. She succeeds. They brainstorm a plan to save the world by giving everyone new middle names, thus making them all family. And then, as they're about to be recaptured by the military school, the spaceship from Close Encounters of the Third Kind shows up and rescues them, revealing that they are part of an alien species of big-brained twin geniuses. They get on the ship and they fly away. The end. I think.
Yeah, that was about
There's a
it.
lot of other stuff that happens, but we'll get into some of that as we move forward. We have a Guess Who. Incredible. Let's do it.
Who are you?
No one of consequence.
I must know.
Get used to disappointment.
Okay?
We have a description. I don't think you'll have any trouble guessing.
Okay.
But I did want to get this description in there. We were monsters, and we were not expected to live very long. We had 6 fingers on each little hand and 6 toes on each little footsie. We had a supernumerary nipples as well, 2 of them apiece. We were not Mongolian idiots, although we had the coarse black hair typical of Mongoloids. We were something new. We were Neanderthaloids. We had the features of adult fossil human beings even in infancy. Massive brow ridges, sloping foreheads, and steam shovel jaws.
Well, so that's very clearly the Eliza and Wilbur.
Yeah.
One of them describing the 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's I guess it's accurate. Ish.
They do have big heads.
They have large heads. This doesn't mention giant ears. They have giant ears in the movie.
Yeah.
It's one of the other things that they did to make them, appear more strange looking. They kind of look like, they actually kind of look like the dude from Mad Magazine.
Yeah.
Whatever that
yeah, the little
that character's
kid.
name is.
Yeah.
I can never remember. But from Matt, he's got oh boy, it's going to drive me crazy. But whatever that, if you've seen Mad Magazine, they kind of look like that.
Kind of.
Where he's like, very cartoony proportions. So yeah, that's them. Okay, moving on. I have some questions. Let's find out if that was in the book.
Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone.
The what?
Honestly, don't you two read?
So this fucking movie, man, it's real bad. We'll get into our feelings more as we go, but it's real bad. As I mentioned at the beginning, don't watch this movie. So one of the things that is first introduced in the movie is that we find out that China shows up. They arrive at a news set. It's like the local evening news, and the ambassador for China is brought in a pot, like a teapot. It's not a tea, but it's
like
some small
thing with a lid.
Yeah, and they announce that they have sort of like mastered the art of the science of shrinking things, and they shrink everybody in China. I assume other than these like 5 dudes who are
who brought
like
him
security or whatever. And that they're severing relations with the rest of the world. And that's how we start our film. Interesting setup, I guess. I assumed it was going to go somewhere, and it doesn't really in the movie, at least. Is that from the book with the China plot?
Yes and yes. Although both of those things they're more like meted out throughout the story. The shrinking thing is mentioned fairly frequently, but it's kind of more like background noise. The movie makes it a little more like the movie is more focused on the China thing than the book is.
They recur a lot, and it's the first the first plot point we're introduced to before we even address anything with the twins or the Swain family.
Yeah. We do at a couple points in the book interact with like a shrunken Chinese people.
Mm-hmm.
Little tiny guys. Not as much as we do in the movie.
Does it go anywhere in the book? Is there any
not
resolution of that in a way that seems like it means something? Now, to be okay, I want to preface all this that this book, Vonnegut is very talented writer. We both have mentioned that I have never read any Vonnegut other than excerpts, and you didn't think maybe other than excerpts you had either. And so there's probably stuff, particularly in the book, not in the movie necessarily, but probably in the book, there's probably stuff going on that we're not like due to the nature of the film and the nature of our discussion, we're not going to go through this book and break down all of the meta commentary and
and
you know what I mean?
The thing is too, I don't even know if I could without being more well versed in the culture of the era. Because I mean that's what Vonnegut does as a writer, is he writes commentary on what was happening at the time.
Right.
And there's a lot in here that is kind of like, I'm sure he's trying to say something,
Yeah.
but it's a little lost on me.
A lot
in
of it kind of flew over
2022.
your head. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that was my point, is that if you're like a big Vonnegut fan or something, I don't want you to be super frustrated that we're like not getting you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I guess that was what I was going to preface, because we're more going to focus on this movie and just what is going on here. So, and not, this isn't going to be, not that any of our stuff is, but so often we will, try to dive a little deeper into some of the thematic things that are going on and what the piece of work is trying to say. I don't know how much we're going to get into that, because we already have a lot to talk about with everything else going on. And so, yeah, just prepare yourself if you're a Vonnegut head, whatever Vonnegut fans are called.
The thing with China in the book, it is commentary. I don't know if I fully understand exactly what the commentary is.
Right.
I don't think it's probably far off from how America still regards.
Yeah, I feel like our relations with China have
yeah.
not changed immensely. I could be very wrong about this, but it does strike me that since the 70s or
yeah,
that our relations have not changed immensely, in the sense of like they're still one of the global superpowers, and
right.
so are we.
Well, and America tends to pick a boogeyman,
right,
and we often have a hard time letting go of that boogeyman. I don't know what I'm trying to say here.
And none of that is to say that, yeah. I guess, like I said, that's my point, is that I just want people to, for this particular episode, to not come into it looking for like deep philosophical and political, historical analysis of this Vonnegut novel.
No.
Is my point.
So all of this to say, it is commentary. The thing with China in the book, I wouldn't call it a plot point, so there's not really a resolution to it.
Yeah,
but I don't
there isn't
know
in
that
the
there
movie
needs to be.
Yeah, and that's fair. There doesn't necessarily need to be, and I think that's fair. And I think they're doing a similar thing in the movie, where it's clearly commentary on U.S. Chinese relations and the rising global superpower that is China at the time, among other things.
Right, and simultaneously, America's decline as a superpower.
And our growing paranoia about them and all that sort of stuff seems to be the backdrop of what's setting this up. So it doesn't necessarily need to... I was just wondering, because they play such an important role in the film, that it felt like...
that is the strange thing to me about... I guess it's not strange, because I have more thoughts on it in a bit.
Yeah.
But the movie seems far more interested in bringing that plot to the forefront of the story than the book is. In the book, it's, for the most part, like I said, it's set dressing. It's background noise. This kind of like overarching like paranoia about what are the Chinese up to?
Right.
Blah blah blah.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that Laurel and Hardy have something to do with the naming of the book. In fact, or something to do with the book. In fact, it could just be the name. Like Slapstick comes as a reference to Laurel and Hardy, because they did slapstick comedy. But do they show up in the story? Because they show up in this movie like a dozen times in the background.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wondered if they directly show up as, again, they're not characters. They don't have a line. They're just in the background. It's a sight gag. I get it. And so it's probably not from the book, but I wanted to know.
So they don't actually show up in the book, or if they did, I missed the reference because I don't know all that much about Laurel and Hardy. They are mentioned in the prologue, because the title of the book, like you said, does come from the idea of slapstick comedy, and he specifically mentions Laurel and Hardy, but the prologue is not part of the story.
Yeah.
It's the author talking directly to the reader.
Right. But anyways, if you have watched the movie, they show up. They're like outside the hospital at one point with like a ladder, or they're outside the hospital doing something, and they're like they show up like in just walking through the background or as extras in like
an
a
Easter
bunch of
egg
scenes,
of sorts, I guess.
And I was just like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. I think they should have done it once. They show up a lot of times.
Yeah, I think one
which I thought was weird. Like one time as an Easter egg for like, people who read the book and are like, oh, I know, and know what it's about. Sure, but it's like, why do they keep showing up in the whatever? Okay. I mean, that's the least of this movie's problems, but
right.
Still, like by far the least of this movie's problems.
Well, and the name of the book too, it's not like there's not slapstick as in like physical comedy in this book. It's slapstick because it's absurdist.
Yes. And that's what I assumed. Yeah. And this movie does not. This movie goes the other direction.
Yes.
And it's like takes it very literally, which
Yeah.
I think the movie, which makes me so mad, is that I think that the title change, the eventual title change, which we'll mention, I'll mention it now. In the movie, when the credits play, it just says slapstick.
Yeah.
This movie was 100% originally just called Slapstick. We talked a little bit in the prequel about how they re-released this movie like 2 years later, and I think then they slapped, no pun intended, whatever, the subtitle, the additional part of the title of Another Kind onto it. I don't think that was, or I think it was just called Slapstick, and then I think they tried to make this weird meta joke about, well, it's a couple things, and we'll get to one of the other things it is, but I think it is also like this meta joke about how the book, like you said, isn't actually about slapstick comedy in the sense of like, Chris Farley falling down a flight of stairs,
right,
or whatever. It's about its absurdity and how that feels to Vonnegut, like how his life feels like a slapstick routine or whatever, or blah blah blah, something like that. And this movie was like, no, we're just gonna do the worst slapstick comedy,
like, the worst slapstick you've ever seen in your life. Like this makes bad Adam Sandler look competent, like bad Adam Sandler. Yeah, like Jack and Jill level Adam Sandler is like a step up from this film. Jack and Jill is Oscar worthy compared to this film.
It's ridiculous. It's so. My jaw was on the floor watching this movie the entire time. I could not believe it got made the way it did. So speaking of slapstick, one of the things that happens early in the film is after we're introduced to Jerry Lewis and Madeline Kahn, they're like celebrities of some sort. I don't know, like actors maybe, or
they're from like wealthy, well-known families. They're like Rockefellers.
I assumed they were like actors or something, but I wasn't. Yeah, whatever.
They're just rich.
They're celebrities and they're having kids, and there's like, so we find out that they're having babies, and go to the hospital as they're having the babies, and she has twins. And then we see we don't see them as babies, but they're brought to the window and shown to Jerry Lewis, and he like freaks out because they're so hideous and ugly or whatever, and he can't take it, and he like stumbles around and literally like falls through a window and out the building into a thing of paint.
Yeah, like a truck full of paint for some reason.
I guess there's a truck full of paint. I guess that's what Laurel and Hardy were painting with, because they had ladder and stuff.
So.
Whatever. It falls into this paint, and I think I know the answer to this because you said there's not really slapstick in the book, but does Jerry Lewis fall out of a window because his babies are so ugly?
They are really ugly, but there's no falling gag.
Okay. Great. So we move forward a little bit, and I don't remember the context exactly of when this happens, but it's when the Chinese character shows up. I think it's the first time when they show up in the spaceship for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Anyways, Pat Morita, is that his name?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I said it. Yeah. He plays like the ambassador to China or whatever. Again, he's shrunken down. He's tiny. They show up, and he like I don't remember the context of this. He's talking to somebody. Jerry Lewis is talking to somebody else, and they like switch, and he's like, "Wait, are you the same guy or are you a different guy or something?" And Pat Morita says, "We all look alike. We got the same damn face." I think somebody says
like
that. One of the Chinese characters says that.
There's like a gag where like the same guy is several different characters.
Yes, but but he's not. He's the same guy.
Right.
He's a spy who's in several different spying as several different
No, and
people.
I got that joke. But then they threw like this in there, and I was like, "What are we saying?"
Well, what we're saying is it's just a racist joke. It's just a joke about how all Chinese people look alike, according to this movie,
right?
Or according to the. And I don't even know how much the movie is. It doesn't feel. None of it feels like it just feels like cheap, like just making just racist jokes. But I wanted to know if that came from the book.
No.
Okay. Cool. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm talking about. This movie is, I cannot stress enough, just nonsense the entire hour and 25 minutes that it runs. It's just chaos and
it's just noise.
It's just noise. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen. I'll get into it more later, but it's legitimately one of the worst movies I've ever watched. I really
want to stress, I don't know how many listeners we have that did not come here from Good, Bad, or Bad, Bad.
At least some, yeah.
But when Brian says this is the worst thing he's ever seen, that means a lot. That has weight to it.
I've watched 150, if not more, terrible movies. Specifically seeking out terrible movies, and this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen because it just has no redeeming qualities. Like it's just bad.
Yeah.
Like, and not in an interesting way. It's just terrible. It's just boring. It's loud. It's obnoxious. It gives you a headache. It's racist. It's ableist. It's offensive in like a million different ways, but not even offensive in like an interesting way. Like, not that that's a good thing, but like, it's just, it's offensive in a boring way, which I think is even worse than being
it's like, okay, I'm going to say something, but like, sometimes things are offensive and you're like, okay, that's offensive.
Yes.
But I understand why some people find it funny.
Yes.
Intellectually, I understand why people find that funny. And this was not that.
Yeah, I'll even go out on a limb. There are jokes that can be made that are offensive that I can groan at and still laugh at and groan at and be like, depending on the context and who's saying it and how they're saying it and what, like there's contextually really offensive things can be funny in certain contexts, again, depending on who's making the joke or whatever. But this is just, it is
truly the lowest
just
form
the
of humor.
lowest possible form of humor.
The lowest possible. The limbo bar was on the floor and this is somehow lower.
Yes, it's wild. It's so wild. We get a little like interstitial animated thing as time passes, explaining that gas prices went through the roof again as the U.S. is like failing basically, and the gas prices go up to like $10,000 a gallon or whatever. So they switch over to literally running their vehicles on chicken shit.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know if that little detail comes from the book, because that was honestly there's one moment where I think the president jokes about, has a line about something with chicken shit, and it's like the only time I laughed in the entire film. I don't even remember what the line was because it wasn't that funny, but I was like that, yeah.
Well, we do get to a point in the book where fossil fuels have like run out, but there's no mention of using chicken shit as a substitute.
Okay. So that's just
well,
I'll give the movie this then, like the one time. No, there was like two times, I think.
I don't think I laughed at this movie
and I
at
say
all.
I didn't laugh. I was like, okay, I can see that might be humorous. Like there was exactly two times, and one of them was literally just the context of like the president saying chicken shit or something. I don't remember. I don't even remember because it wasn't that funny. But I just yeah. So then I want to know is it, so we talked about the Chinese and they're all shrunk down and they're flying around in a little spaceship, and in the movie it is literally, and I realize now that I said this in the prequel and I'm just realizing what it is. It's a fortune cookie. They fly around in a tiny fortune cookie spaceship, and I want to know if that is from the book.
No, there are no flying fortune cookies in the book. I didn't look this up, but I feel like I remember at some point reading somewhere, are fortune cookies even Chinese? Aren't those like an American
I don't know.
Chinese cuisine thing?
I don't know. I think in the sense, if I had to guess, I would say that they're American Chinese cuisine. Like, I bet if you go to Chinese restaurants in China, like you go to a restaurant in China, you're not going to get a fortune cookie.
Right.
But I don't think they're American in the sense that like I think it was like Chinese people invented them. I could be wrong. I don't know. I've never really looked it up. It's definitely like a westernized thing.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be necessarily comfortable saying that it's not like, you know, I don't know. Here we go. They are not Chinese in origin. The exact origin of fortune cookies is unclear, though various immigrant groups in California claim to have popularized them in the early 20th century. Most likely originated from cookies made by Japanese immigrants to the United States in the late 19th or early 20th century. The Japanese version did not have the Chinese lucky numbers and was eaten with tea. So seems like, no, it's definitely from the U.S. Place of origin is the U.S. It may be immigrants,
right?
And but it also may be Japanese. It sounds like it's complicated, but yes, the idea, you're not going to a Chinese restaurant in China. You're not going to a restaurant in China and getting fortune cookies with your meal. No. Or if you are, you're probably in like a touristy place where they're giving. Yeah. So, speaking of this, is the book as laden with racist stereotypes as the film is, and more importantly, is it intentional in the book, and is there any commentary? Because, like I mentioned, I don't think there is in the movie. It's just really hilarious jokes about how all Chinese people look the same, and gongs play whenever they show up, and they fly around in fortune cookies.
So there's definitely some questionable stuff here and there in the book, but most of it, I think, feels more like commentary on America's racism and xenophobia. The movie I would categorize as gleeful racism.
I would agree with that.
There is one thing that I want to talk about, and I don't know that I don't know if it's accurate to put it under racism, but it was a weird thing in the book that I don't know what Vonnegut was trying to say with this element in the book. So if anybody knows, please tell me. I would love to know. So this book kind of jumps back and forth between different points in Wilbur's life. Like, we get his backstory where they're like kids and like everything that happens to him and Eliza, but he's telling us that story as an old man living in the ruins of New York City after a society has crumbled, basically. And one of the elements in this brave new world of crumbled New York City is that one of his neighbors has slaves. And and the slaves are all happy to be slaves in the book. And so at first I was like, okay, so one of the main like ideas that he's exploring in this novel is like familial connection and like group belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, is he maybe like trying to say something about like, oh, people want to belong to a group so badly that they're like happy to be in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the angle? And it's not a huge element in that part of the story. It's just something that gets mentioned pretty frequently. So I was pretty happy with that explanation.
Okay.
And then close to the end, the slaves were planting watermelon and singing spirituals. And I was like, what? I don't know.
Maybe maybe the idea, and here's the problem. I don't know enough about Vonnegut to know like what.
Yeah, that's my
his
problem
opinions,
too.
like what his his whole deal was. Because I, so approaching it completely blunt, like just without knowing anything, there could be even still, I don't think that's necessarily the best way to go about that, but that you could be it could be commentary on the fact that, assuming, and again, you would never go, why would you ever go about it this way? Assuming that inclusion was to allude to the idea that they are like black people being enslaved, assuming that's what that's going for, just, I don't know. But is that maybe the idea that even in this post-apocalyptic, this cyclical society, that regardless of what happens in America, we'll find a way to
like cycle
back through the same horror. Well, not even that, but just like that the awful that racism and things like slavery are so intrinsic to the DNA of a place like the U.S. that, again, people who know more about this might be like, nope, not at all the point. I have no idea. And that those things are so intrinsic to sort of the DNA of our country that unless, if anything resembling the United States still exists, we will find a way to replicate the horrible things like slavery of our past. I don't know. I'm just trying to... I don't know.
And that's where I really struggled with this book, is that I'm like, I know this is commentary. I know it is.
Yeah.
It's commentary on something.
Yeah.
I know it is. But I am not well versed enough in either Vonnegut or the time period to comfortably say, this is what he's commenting on. And I also just don't particularly like the way he went about it in some places.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally fair.
Like, personally for me, it wasn't
what didn't work.
Didn't work for me.
It's going to be a no for me, bruh. All right. So the children, are they? Well, we do. They're gigantic. Okay, so that's already a yes, because in the Guess Who, we know that they are gigantic. Do they just scream random gibberish at people? Because that was a thing that happened in the first 30 minutes of this movie, and I was like, if this happens the whole movie, This is a movie that if we hadn't been watching it for if for some reason, even for good, bad, or bad, I would have turned it off after 20 minutes and say, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
I'm just not.
Yeah.
I'm just not.
Yeah. No, I would not have made it very far into that film if we were not watching it for the podcast. They do speak in gibberish for the first little bit of the book before they reveal their genius.
So are they intentionally being stupid?
Yes,
quote unquote,
because they think that's what people want them.
Okay, so that's the same thing in the movie.
They think that's how the people around them want them to be. So that's how they behave.
Interesting. Okay. At this point in my notes, I wrote, I refuse to write questions and prolong this episode. Then I wrote some more questions, but so we find out that they do this thing that when they are thinking together, they put their heads together. They're super smart when they're together, as we mentioned, and when they're thinking together, put their heads together. And in the movie, when this happens, their hair pulls back, it recedes, and then their brains pulsate.
Yeah,
and it's awful and horrifying. I don't want to know if that's in the book.
It's not in the book, and also I hated it.
Good. I hated it too. It's the worst.
It.
It's so bad.
It was so horrible to look at.
Yep. Everything in this movie was horrible to look at. There's not really anything that was wow, that was nice. Even, and these are things that are intentionally kind of gross. This is intentionally, supposed to be nauseating and gross. You're supposed to because this movie does ride a line and at times of kind of doesn't do a ton of it of gross out juvenile humor type stuff, but even the stuff that is not intended to be like that is still not nice to look at. It's just an ugly movie. It's just not. It's terrible. So and then as they start thinking with their brains together, they start like kind of kissing each other, and this is again to help them think more. And then in the movie, the parents are there, and they have to explain to them what incest is, and that's not okay. Does that happen in the book?
So there's no scene where they have to explain incest, but there are similar concerns in the book, all of which made me intensely uncomfortable. Incest is kind of a hard line for me. I appreciate that the movie didn't have them snuffle in each other's crotches.
Yep.
That's something that happened in the book. Also, later in the book, when they reunite, they go into like a fugue state is like the closest thing I can think of to describe it, but I don't know if that's actually like medically accurate.
Probably not.
But they go into like a fugue state with massive air quotes, and Vonnegut keeps calling it an orgy, and I hated it. I hated it every time. I hated it every single time he called it an orgy.
Well, that's fugue state and an orgy are nothing like each other.
Well, like, okay.
Those are very different
they go
ideas.
into like they become so engrossed in their reunion that they like don't know what they're doing, and then they wake up like days later.
I mean, okay, so that is kind of like a fugue state.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Vonnegut keeps calling it an orgy.
Well, then it sounds. I mean, why would he use that? That word only has one meaning, basically, or roughly one meaning.
I didn't like it.
There are some variations on that meaning, but okay, we're just gonna move on. Done talking about that. We then get a musical number in the movie.
Yeah.
I
don't
thought
know.
I was losing my mind at this point.
Where that wistful late 70s musical number came from.
I also couldn't understand what she was singing. The sound mix was bad. I mean, the sound mix in the whole movie's bad. There was constant background like hum throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
But in this scene, I couldn't understand or hear what she was singing. So I have no idea what she was even singing about. But then a bat shows up, like a stop motion claymation bat.
Well, first it's like an effect that almost looks like birdemic birds.
Oh,
did you notice
No,
that?
I missed that
it
part.
flies across the screen and it kind of looks like that. And then it's a stop motion bat.
Yeah, because then it's sitting there and it looks like the skeletons from Jason and the Argonauts or whatever. It's wild.
I think the bat was the only thing that I laughed at. But not because the movie intended it to be funny.
Maybe it did. I don't know. It might have. But then she's singing a ballad and there's a bat, and I was like, "What the fuck is happening? What is any of that in the book? What is that? What?"
No, there's not. No
bats.
No bats.
No musical numbers.
Musical number. Yeah, no.
Cool. I straight up thought I was having a stroke watching that scene. I was like, what?
It became a different movie
It's so
for 3 minutes.
It's fucking wild. So as we mentioned, Wilbur gets taken to a military school, and at one point at the military school, we see this room that they have where they're re-educating the kids. And there's this scene where they have helmets on them that they use to deliver electric shocks to them to teach the kids, quote unquote. And to me, this felt like the only scene that could come from something with Vonnegut, or it was the only scene that felt like anything interesting. It's not even that interesting, but it's at least an idea, because he also then mentions that the book. So they're reading these books, and whenever they look up from the books or do something wrong reading the books, they get zapped. But then it's revealed that the books are blank, and he has a line about how once they get good enough at this, then I'll upgrade them to real books, or books with writing or something like that. And this scene is the only time where it feels like there's even a hint of an interesting idea of the critique of like the education system and like this, sort of this force rote memorization of indoctrination of ideas and like and zapping people into line, and it turns out the thing they're learning isn't even anything. Like, there's at least an idea there. It's half baked at best, and it's poorly executed entirely, but it's at least something. It's like a bad version of something out of like a Pink Floyd music video. It's like whatever. Like but it's at least a thing. And I was like, this is the only thing that feels like it could come from a person who has interesting things to say. And I wanted to know if any of that comes from the book.
It doesn't.
Great.
I agree with you though. Like, I agree with your assessment. The closest we get in the book, Wilbur goes all the way through school, and he actually like graduates from Harvard in the book, and says that it made him duller and less interesting, but it also inflated his ego. So there's like a hint of critique of like the education system there,
right?
But that particular scene is not from the book.
Okay, great. I'm almost done talking. I can't wait to get to your parts, and then I'm going to sit here. So then, at the end of the movie, this is the very end of the movie. They, as I mentioned in the thing, they run away. They're trying to hide and barricade themselves from the military school. And then at the last minute, as they were out to get blown up, or the door blown open to get taken away, the aliens from Close Encounters show up. And now I could be wrong. It's been quite a while since I've seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, but I am like 99% sure that is basically just the ship.
No, I
one of the
Googled it
ships
after
from
you
Close
said
Encounters of the Third Kind.
Because I've never seen Close Encounters.
It's a great film. We should watch it. It's a very good movie.
And it does look like that's the ship.
It's like the ship from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And the whole end of this movie is the whole last 5 or 6 minutes of this movie is just the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Basically, like we get the big doorway of light, and the aliens come off the ship, and then our main characters get on the ship and fly. Like it's just Close Encounters. And I was like, what the fuck why is this just Close Encounters? And does that happen in the book?
No, they're not aliens in the book. That came out of... I was very blindsided by that in the film. That came out of nowhere.
They're just aliens.
They're just aliens at the end. I don't think the movie knew how to end it. So I literally, like, they were like, well, then the aliens come down, and then the movie's over. The end.
Somebody was like, oh, you know what was popular 5 years ago? Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's not even a timely reference anymore. Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out in like 1977. This movie...
It's too far removed from it to be relevant, but not far enough removed from it to be like a fun reference.
A fun, like retro
like,
throwback.
Remember
Close
that?
Encounters. Yeah, that, like if you did that ending in like the late 90s, like it would be like, oh shit, yeah, like it's 20 years later or whatever. It was like 4 years later. It's like, what? 5 years later? Come on. Oh my God. But yeah, and then you wrote Close Encounters of Another Kind, and that just blew my mind and made me realize the other reason they changed the name of the fucking movie.
Yep.
Holy shit. I was like, oh my God.
Yep.
That's what it is. Oh no, I hate it. Thanks, I hate it. I hate it so much. So, movie's over. They fly away on the ship with their other aliens like them, and being incredibly charitable to this film in a way that it does not deserve in any way. This movie is about being misunderstood and feeling like an outcast and trying to find a place that you can call home. I think. I mean, not I think. I know that's what the movie is, quote unquote, about. It delivers that message terribly in a way that is not interesting, in a way that is incredibly like counter it, like in a way that's so cruel and offensive and awful that it literally contradicts the whole like message that it's kind of trying to go for. I think like it's bad in every possible feasible way, but I think that is like the point, and I want to know if that is quote unquote the point of the book.
Yes, kind of. Yeah. I think at its core, the book is an exploration of different kinds of human connection, how we seek that connection, what we do with it. and what happens when it is denied or corrupted in some way. So
Yeah. Similar idea.
it's at least adjacent.
Adjacent, yeah. Okay. Cool. I had one question for Lost in Adaptation, so let's do that now.
Just show me the way to get out of here, and I'll be on my way.
There's a lost.
Yes, and I want to get unlost as soon as possible.
At one point in the film, we see them, and I guess I could have just left this in. Was that in the book? Because whether or not it's in the book would be relevant to whether or not this helps. They've been stupid the whole movie, or the whole lead up, and then there's a scene where they're alone in the bedroom, and then they start talking to each other, and they do mention that they're pretending to be stupid because that's what like they is expected or whatever. That's what they think that they're supposed to do. And then Jerry Lewis turns on classical music, and him and Madeline Kahn start like ballroom dancing around the room. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to know if that was in the book, and if the point of that is that supposed to indicate that they're actually very intelligent? And I was like, is that what I'm supposed to be getting out of the scene? Is that, oh, look, they like classical music and know how to ballroom dance. Actually, they're very smart.
That does appear to be like what we're supposed to get from that. It's not something that happened in the book, so I can't provide any more insight,
Cool.
but I do think that's what we're supposed to get from that.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, better in the book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
I just have my 3 sections, I just have some random items, and I'll give more of an overall analysis at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in the book, their parents actually visit them regularly. They come every year on their birthday, and it's kind of stressed at the beginning that their parents do their best to love them.
Okay.
Which I feel like is not really what we get in the movie.
No. At least, I mean, well, because no, they don't visit at all, but they do at least when they come this one time that we see, like when they come back 15 years later, they seem to be attempting to make, or seem to be trying to make an attempt to, like, love them or something. I don't know. I don't care. Next one. I don't care. I'm done talking about this movie. I hate this movie so much, and I just don't care.
The mansion in the book was more interesting. It had secret passages and hidden rooms, which was a missed opportunity. Not that this movie particularly cares.
See, why would you leave that out, though?
Yeah, that's actually
it's like,
interesting.
at least especially if you're going to do a wacky comp, like you could have hijinks.
Yeah, I don't know.
Whatever.
Oh, we mentioned this, but the twins are just Jerry Lewis and Madeline Kahn with like square head prosthetics.
Yeah, they play themselves
and big ears and false teeth.
Yeah, they play themselves and their kid. Well, not themselves. They play the parents and the kids. And yeah, they just...
It's just like the most boring possible way you could have interpreted the characters.
It literally, it like I said, it's just the Mad Magazine character. It's so boring.
And then I wrote, Jesus fucking Christ, they're supposed to think these two have pretty severe intellectual disabilities, and they're just putting them in straitjackets and macing them. Also, what does this movie think mace is?
It does no idea.
This movie thinks mace is knockout gas. Yeah. I don't...
The movie, we both had the same note.
Mace is.
We both had the exact same note. The movie, there's a scene where the kids are doing something, and they're like, get the mace. And then they spray him with mace, and we get it from a first-person perspective, and the camera goes woozy and passes out. And I was like, what? That is not what mace is. What the fuck are we doing?
And I know in 1982 you couldn't just do a quick Google of what is mace.
But they knew.
But like,
people knew.
Did no one at any point?
Dozens of people worked on this movie.
Production was like, hey yo, that's not what mace is.
It's not remotely what mace
not
is.
Not even close to what mace is.
Not even close. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. I will say that the straitjacketing the people with severe intellectual disabilities and doing horrible, cruel things to them is not out of line for most of human history.
Well, no, I know
including
that.
current day. So
I just, it's like, and I know it's probably just me watching it in 2022, but the depiction of it as physical comedy absent of any kind of deeper commentary was very jarring.
Well, and the thing is, I think the movie thinks, like, maybe at times wishes there was commentary in that angle, but there's not. It doesn't come across that way at all. It does not remotely come across as, because I think the movie thinks at times that it is being sympathetic to these characters, but it never feels that way.
No.
I think, like I said, I think the movie likes to think it is, but it just isn't. It's just using them for cheap laughs, and like it's just cruel. Like it isn't actually being sympathetic in any way that feels real or genuine at all.
So in the book, the thing that makes them decide to reveal that they actually are intelligent is so their parents come to visit them for their birthday, and after they go to bed, they sneak back out in the secret passageway, and they're like eavesdropping on their parents. And
I ain't been dropping no eaves, sir.
And their mom has this like moment of being like overcome with frustration, and she's like, I hate them both. I'm like, I can't help it. I just hate them. And then immediately is like, I didn't mean that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I just don't know what to do in this situation. And like, that's the thing that spurs them to reveal, because they're like, we want to make her happy.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I felt like it was nicer.
Yeah,
in the
for
book.
sure. I don't even remember why they decide to.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
I think it's just like chaos happens, and then the next scene they just come downstairs and they're like, actually, we're not. We were just acting, with like zero actual motivation as to why that happens.
I don't know. The part where they were like testing them, where they're doing the intelligence tests and they're apart. Eliza's reaction to me felt more true to the book than Wilbur's did. Like he was like jamming the pencil through the paper.
Yeah,
and I'm like, they're not like idiots when they're apart. They're just like kind of average.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, she seems kind of I felt the same thing, and it's another one of those moments where it's just like so many times in this movie, and I don't know a lot about Jerry Lewis or his career. I feel like I've seen maybe one Jerry Lewis movie in my life, but it's so many times. It just reminded me of like bad Adam Sandler movies or something, where they're like, this person is funny. We don't need to write anything interesting or think about it at all. We'll just put them on camera and literally say, do whatever. And so they put him on the camera and said, "Okay, now you're taking this test.
Man, be funny.
You're taking this test, and you're not, because you're not with your sister. You're much dumber, and so now you got to take this test, but you're dumb."
Yeah.
And then he just sat there and like literally like the lowest level. Like it's like if you put some like me on camera and was like, "Be an idiot," I would like flip papers around and like shove a pencil through. Like I don't. It's so bad. It's so depressingly bad that nobody watching this movie at any point was like, we should just burn all of this film. we should take all of this film and put it in a big pile and dump gasoline on it and light it on fire. Like, I don't know how nobody said that. And then as soon as, because here's the thing. As soon as one person would have had the courage to be like, guys, we should just burn all this film, everybody would like snap out and be like, oh my God, you're right. Oh my God, you're so right. What did we do? And then they would just burn the film and the world would be a better place. Like, I don't know how that didn't happen. I don't understand.
I don't know, but I feel like I understand now in a very deep in my soul way why this movie was not available to watch anywhere until very recently.
Yeah. If I'm the estate of Madeline Kahn, I'm burying this thing. I'm sending my lawyers out to make sure this never sees the light of day. Are you kidding me?
There's so they call in this like specialist in the book, this doctor from Russia, and she's horrible. And it's a very interesting scene. But she's like really awful. Like she hates them right off the bat. And like is purposefully doing things to make them look like stupid, so that their family will like send them away or mistreat them or whatever. And I feel like they kind of tried for it with the family doctor, but it didn't really feel like the same to me.
Yeah.
And I liked that in the book, the mother really stands up for them against that doctor. She calls her an overdressed sparrow fart, which I particularly enjoyed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a fun insult.
we like let Madeline Kahn say overdressed sparrow fart. Let her do it.
Let her do it.
Let her do it.
Let her do it.
Okay, so my last thing here, I don't understand why the movie even bothered trying to include the whole thing with middle names and artificial families. Like, I thought that the book's exploration of a familial and human connection and what it means to lack that is probably the most interesting thing about it. But I don't understand why the movie tried that at the 11th hour.
It makes no sense.
It made zero sense.
No.
Where they're just squeezing in this, like...
Well, it's because so at one point the president asked them, "How do we fix the world or the U.S. or whatever,
Yeah.
something like that?" And this is them answering that question later, but they answer it with just the two of it. Like
Yeah.
the solution it's just the two of them sitting under a tree. They come up with this answer, and then it's never. They don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
They don't tell it
Well,
to
yeah,
anybody. They
they
just get on the ship and fly away afterwards.
Yeah. Well, and the thing to me too is that like to me it's a weird kind of interesting like concept in the book, and the book really like sits with it.
Yes. Oh no.
And
Yeah.
lets you kind of like, and it kind of like lets you think about it.
Yeah.
And then it explores like what the outcome of something like that would be. And the movie just like shoehorns it in
one of the most
last
shoehorned
10
in
minutes.
things in a movie ever.
And I was like, why did you bother?
Why did you bother?
Why did you bother?
Literally, at this point, like it's not like you did you really feel like if this is the straw that needed to be like this is the thing that has to be included or else people will be upset in our adaptation of this Vonnegut novel, because spoilers, that was not the thing that was gonna break the back.
Ship has sailed.
That ship
my
has sailed
friend.
long ago. You don't need to include this thing that makes no sense. And literally, Jerry Lewis just like speed raps it
Yeah.
like in like 30 seconds. And then it just disappears into the ether and is never heard of again. Like it's just, and I was like, what is, me not having read the book, I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? And like, I got what he was saying. I was like, oh, okay. But then the movie never does anything with it. The movie never does anything leading up to it. It's just this thing that happens for like 45 seconds. And then it disappears. It just up and vanished like a fart in the wind. It's like, what in the world is happening? It's wild. God. It was so stupid. So stupid. I hated it. I'm amazed that I'm about to say this, but let's find out what was better in the movie.
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
Okay, so there's some things that okay. So I
Defend yourself.
So when we're in the news room getting the news. Local news.
Yeah, at the beginning.
I thought that a news hour with a gossip segment was like theoretically funny. I didn't think it was funny in the movie, but I was like, theoretically, that's a funny bit.
You could do a bit there,
Yeah.
They don't.
No.
But you could.
But you could.
Boy, what a blue banner day for this film. There was a thing in this movie that theoretically could have been funny. It wasn't. It was not. But it theoretically could have been.
My next
Heaping praise onto this film.
My next note is similar. I thought the gag with their knee reflexes is theoretically funny. Theoretically,
Yes,
an
I agree.
interesting
It's at
way
least
to like show that they're psychically
the idea
connected.
of it is not the worst thing in the world.
Like theoretically, they went again for the lowest, cheapest shot with it
kick him in the nuts,
kick him in the crotch.
And then he like flies through the ceiling. Like, oh
what
my
is
God,
that?
I don't know. They are strong, I guess, because they're big. I don't know. Whatever.
So yeah, like theoretically that could have been interesting. It wasn't.
Yep.
But like theoretically. And I thought the scene after Wilbur leaves where the staff is trying to make Eliza happy was like kind of sweet.
I agree. That was also something that felt completely out of place in the movie.
And it also didn't mesh with what we had already seen of the staff at all.
No.
Except for the maid maybe. But like, I don't know, it's a nice idea.
I agree. That was the one part I was like, oh, this is at least kind of sweet. Or something. It doesn't fit at all. It doesn't make sense with these characters. They don't seem like they would care at all about these kids to do that.
Well, we've already seen that they don't care, and that they're just like using this as a way to live the high life.
Yeah. But for some reason now with zero build up, zero reason to think that these characters would act this way.
Bending over backwards to
try to make her happy.
Which is sweet, but it makes no sense.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's find out what the movie nailed.
As I expected, practically perfect in every way.
They do have giant cribs in the book. Eliza can't read or write. Mm-hmm. Wilbur and Eliza have like a left brain, right brain thing, kind of like air quotes, because that's not really a thing.
But the idea,
the
one
idea
of them does,
one of them is like
math
analytical, and one of them is like more like a
creative,
intuitive,
gotcha.
They threw one hi ho there at the end.
I can't believe I didn't ask about this. Can you explain the hi ho? It's right at the end of the movie, and I was like, what the that is nothing
that just
to do
the
with
words
the rest of
pop up on the screen.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
It's like
if
the
you
end. It's like in place of the end, basically, in the film.
So,
and I was like, I have 0 point of reference for that. That's just 2 words. It's just hi ho. Okay, great.
So it's a repeated phrase throughout the book, which again is narrated by very old, like basically senile Wilbur.
Okay.
And I think he says it's like what does he call it? Like a verbal tick or something.
Okay.
Or he doesn't call it that. It's something else specific. But so he just like repeats it every now and then. Usually it ends a section of the text.
Interesting.
Again, I don't really know if Vonnegut's trying to say something with that or not.
Yeah.
Or if it's just like part of the overall absurdity of the novel. But yeah, that little card at the end of the movie would really make no sense if you hadn't read the book.
It meant nothing to me,
you.
other than I saw it on the cover, because the cover has hi-ho on the eyeballs of the clown. So, cool. All right, we got a few odds and ends before we get to the final verdict.
All right, so let's talk about whether or not this movie was sponsored by Dr. Pepper.
It was absolutely sponsored by Dr. Pepper.
There's Dr. Pepper everywhere.
I feel so bad for Dr. Pepper.
Right? Maybe it was Dr. Pepper who's trying to bury this movie.
Oh, maybe.
Ooh, Dr. Pepper was like, can we just?
And then, there was this one dinner scene where they have they're drinking Dr. Pepper, and it's Dr. Pepper in light blue and white cans. And I was like, what the heck? I've never seen. And, obviously, labeling's changed over the years. But then I saw what it was. It's sugar-free Dr. Pepper, which is interesting. And it actually blew my mind, because we literally just yesterday had a conversation. Mm-hmm. Because I just bought some Dr. Pepper's Zero, or Dr. Pepper Cherry Zero, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that, I literally made a comment about how the cans for that are like black and blue.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is it blue? Why would it's cherry and it's Dr. Pepper? Both of those things are red normally. Why is there blue on this can? But then I was like, I wonder if that blue is a weird holdover from their zero-calorie or sugar-free.
Or maybe it's just like a throwback reference.
That's what I mean.
Remember the old sugar-free.
That's what I mean.
Dr.
It's like
Pepper.
one of their designers was like, oh God, because they went back and looked and saw some of the old, and like, oh, we used to use blue on our sugar-free cans, and maybe they use blue on more than our sugar-free cans. I don't know. But I thought we saw other ones that were red. I'm pretty sure
because there's 3 specific instances of Dr. Pepper
Yeah.
that I can recall. One was the blue cans. In the opening sequence in the hospital, we see a Dr. Pepper machine.
Yeah.
And then I think it's
It's red, though. Like,
Yeah,
the
it is
machine's like
red.
red, or like the normal Dr.
Yeah.
Pepper, like maroon or whatever.
And I think the other one was the guy at the military academy who was like zapping the students.
Yeah, he does
was
have a Dr.
drinking
Pepper on his
Dr.
desk.
Pepper
Yeah.
out of like a cup with a straw, like a
Yeah.
restaurant cup. But I think it was red, like red and white. I'm pretty sure.
I can't remember. Yeah. But yeah, it's very strange. I was like,
Yeah.
I wonder if some designer was like blue sugar-free, like 0 calorie Dr. Pepper. And that's the thing. Next thing I thought, I was like, oh God, I bet sugar-free Dr. Pepper in the 80s or whatever when this was filmed was terrible.
Yeah.
Like it had to be awful.
Oh, I bet it tasted real bad and
Like-
gave you all kinds of
It
weird
probably
shit.
gave you diarrhea.
Yeah.
Like every sugar-free thing back then gave you diarrhea. Like, and I like a lot of the I like Diet Coke and stuff and most 0 calorie, low calorie sodas these days. But like, we've gotten a lot better than they were back then. I bet it was freaking terrible. Oh my gosh. Also, I think I hate the patron that made us watch this. I don't, but I do a little. It's okay. I forgive you if you apologize.
Normally, I feel bad when I don't like the patron requests, but I don't feel bad about this.
No, they
one.
intentionally did this. They did this on purpose. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
This was all a prank, and fair play, but also screw you. Oh God, the dinner food fight scene in this movie, it was just the worst too. It's the one with the Diet
awful.
Dr.
It was
Pepper.
Just terrible.
It's just it's all so lazy is the other
Yeah.
thing. It's like everything in it is just it's the laziest right. Like
Yeah.
they didn't write anything.
They went with their first idea.
And not even and their first idea and none of their first ideas were good.
Yeah.
Like none of them. I go with my first idea a lot, but I guess I'm just like a fucking genius. I don't know. Like some of my first ideas are pretty okay in comparison. Like holy shit. Just terrible.
I guess we've already answered this question, but I did write at the food fight scene. I wrote,
Oh.
do you think anyone ever laughed at any part of this movie? Like at any point within its entire existence, has anyone ever genuinely laughed at any part of it?
I mean, like I said, and I didn't laugh. I breathed quickly out of my nose at 2 parts. Or 1 part or 2 parts, and I don't even remember what they were because it wasn't enough to merit memory. But if I went back, I could probably find there was 2 like quote unquote jokes that actually felt like jokes and not just being assaulted by the film. Oh God, did I fail? I failed. I had a note here that says I refuse to allow this episode to be longer than an hour, and we're at 1 hour and 7 minutes. So. Followed up by my next note, this is so fucking boring.
It was, though. Oh, God, it was so boring.
It was so boring.
So boring.
Well, and it's so boring while being so
upsetting and offensive
filled with
and
stuff. No.
assaultive.
Yeah, yes. It's so boring while being so filled with stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's just so filled with noise and it's just it's the Shelby posted it today. It's the fire fire on the sides or flames on the sides of my head or whatever. Like it's that. I was just like the whole time that's what I was feeling watching this fucking movie.
So my next question. Do you think that our episode will cause a noticeable spike in streams?
Yes,
of this movie?
absolutely.
Like,
us watching it, our one stream caused a fucking noticeable spike in streams.
I feel
of this
like
movie.
whoever put this on YouTube is gonna be like, "Wow, this usually gets 0 views, and
Yeah.
this week it got 3."
Oh, that and the fucking rentals on Amazon.
They're gonna be like, "Wait a minute,
a second, we just
Wait
made
a minute."
$4 on this goddamn movie." Yeah. We probably like tripled the amount of money this movie has ever made just with our rental alone.
That's ghastly. I hate that.
It's the worst. It's the worst. Just another reason to hate the patron that recommended. I was reminded in this movie, it's the first time I've seen Madeline Kahn in anything for a long time, that I had a gigantic crush on her when I was a little kid back in the day from watching Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, and Clue. Holy shit. And then this movie.
Who could blame you?
True. She's amazing. But not in this one.
This one is not a particularly flattering.
No. It's not the worst.
I also feel like Madeline Kahn knew that this was a shit show. Like, just from watching her face.
There's one scene in
film.
particular.
And I don't know if I believe the same about Jerry Lewis, but I think Madeline Kahn knew.
There was one scene in this movie, or one moment where she's playing the mother, and there's like chaos happening, and they're filming her reacting to it. And I think they must have filmed them doing the chaos first, and she saw the dailies. And then the next day they filmed her reacting to her, them doing and she was like, oh no. And it was just real. It was just her dying inside and having to be in this film. And that she signed on the line, has to finish this movie, because it felt so genuine. And it wasn't even it almost didn't even feel like the proper reaction to what she was seeing in the scene. Mm-hmm. It just felt like, this is her reaction to being in this movie. I'll see if I can find just that clip, but it's wild. And the whole time I was convinced this movie was just a prank on the audience. Because like I said, it's not even bad in an interesting way. It's just sound and fury, and it's terrible. And it's an assault on all of your senses at all time in the worst possible way.
I felt like the scene at the end where they're going to blow up the door, I felt like they went down to the local mid-tier frat house to get all of the extras who were playing the soldiers.
Yes. They're all like all like high schoolers. Yeah. Well, I think they are, because I actually think they're younger than high schoolers.
I think so?
Because when Jerry Lewis is standing there marching among them and he's like taller than them all, I'm like, I wonder if they got like little kids. Not little kids, but like middle schoolers. It is supposed to be a
military school, so I guess they could be like any age.
Well, I don't know how old they're supposed to be. Yeah. I'm saying the people playing those characters might have been little kids to make Jerry Lewis look a lot taller than them all.
It's fair.
Because Jerry Lewis is not like a particularly tall guy.
Is he not?
No, I mean, no, he's not 6'6" or whatever. He's like, he might be 6 foot tall. Now. I don't know.
Oh, he was 6 foot tall.
Okay, but yeah, nailed it. But like,
right, but you surround him.
He's like towering. If you put a bunch of like middle schoolers around him,
right,
and that's why they would look even younger than they actually are. I don't know. Because I thought that during one of the scenes where they're marching up and down, or he might have been on like platform shoes. I don't know. Who knows? But there's at one point there was a scene where he's in the bedroom. And he's like sitting between the two cribs crying, and behind him there's a horrifying like Five Nights at Freddy's like mascot head, and you can just see the eyes like looming out of the darkness. And I was like, "What the fuck is that?" And it's in like one shot, and I was just like, "Why is that back there?" It
reminded me of. Have you ever seen like vintage pictures of Disneyland? Like before they got good at
old,
the
terrible mascots. Yeah. But it's like it's obscured in darkness and the light is hitting it just enough that you can see its freaking eyes, and it's terrifying.
There are also giant like Raggedy Ann dolls in their bedroom.
Oh,
which
I missed those.
Terrifying. So when the aliens show up, the movie does like the kind of classic like everything goes haywire.
Yeah.
Except they do it fucking forever. Oh, it just went on and on and on. I was like, we get it. They're aliens coming. We understand.
They're filling time to get to their 90 minutes because
don't need to watch any more footage.
Any more cupboards opening. Banging. Yeah. And grates, light coming through grates and fucking curtains billowing and like everything they could possibly think of to like fucking put a leaf blower behind. And film for 30 seconds and then put a fog machine behind and a spotlight. They did. They went around the entire house like, what else can we put a spotlight and a leaf blower behind? And they fucking found it and they did it. It goes on forever. It's wild.
So then they're just aliens, as we said. And the aliens, when they show up, they're like, we're taking you home because the Earth does not appreciate your genius. And I was like, well, where have you fucking been, bud? Where have you been? It's been 15 years.
Just letting them hang out.
Where have you been?
Yep. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
They don't care.
But I hate it, so I'm going to drag it in every way I can.
Yep. My final note and hot take on this film is that Stephen Paul, the writer, director, producer of this film, should legitimately be put in prison.
I agree.
Legitimately, that man has
Lock him
bodies
up.
in his basement. I should be in prison. I did some looking around. As I mentioned in the prequel, he wrote all of the Baby Geniuses movies, which in retrospect now makes a lot more sense with the premise of this film.
Yeah.
Of these
Yeah.
like, you know, like
They were onesies the whole time.
they're like, yeah, and they act like toddlers or whatever
Yeah.
for like most of the movie, but also they're geniuses. I was like, wait a second, this is just
Hang
Baby
on.
Geniuses, but like worse. I don't even know. But he wrote like all the Baby Geniuses movies. Also, he was a producer on the Bratz movie, and among other, he's produced,
I love the Bratz movie.
he's produced
I love it.
hundreds of movies.
Yeah.
And I just once again was like, why am I not making movies? How, as we were watching this movie, I was like, how this is I mean, the budget on this movie was not big, but this guy wrote this script and somebody signed off on it and they filmed it. And not once did this guy does he wake up and ever doubt himself? Is what I have to know. How can you write something and make something like this and not just hate yourself for the rest of your life? I mean that in the nicest way possible. Like, I think about things that I made that were like, didn't quite turn out the way I wanted. I stew on them. I'll stew on it for the rest of my life. This person has made hundreds of these movies, and I don't understand. I don't understand. He should be in jail.
He should be in jail for actively making the world a worse place.
Really should. It's wild. It's just,
Geniuses.
it's wild. All right, before we get to the final verdict, we want to remind you all, you can do us a giant favor by heading over to patreon.com/thisfilmislit. Support us there for a couple bucks a month. You get access to bonus content and other stuff, including the $15 level. You get to recommend stuff to us like this person did, Jeff Niederhofer. This is not a thank you. This is just a recognition of what you've done to us. Also, you can do us a giant favor by heading over to all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads. Just search for This Film Is Lit. Follow us on there. Leave us feedback, particularly on for our prequel episodes. We like to get your feedback so we can talk about the movies on the prequel episodes. I would be very interested to see what people have to say about this film. I've already seen a little bit of it in the lead up to the movie.
I think this was the only time we had multiple people warn us.
Yep.
Before watching a film.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Katie, it's time for the final verdict.
Now, are you ready for your sentence?
Sentence? But there must be a verdict first.
Sentence first, verdict afterward.
So I didn't even particularly like this book, but I think I'm about to go to bat for it because the movie was just so goddamn awful. Like we said, I'm going to reiterate again, this is the only Vonnegut I've ever read. So my opinions on this book in particular are not my overall opinions on his writing because I haven't read a large enough sample. And I know this isn't like one of his most well-received novels.
Yeah.
I imagine I would feel differently about like Slaughterhouse-Five or something.
Yeah.
I thought that the book espoused some mildly interesting philosophical ideas. I would be interested to hear someone who knows more about philosophy talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt similarly about this book to how I did about Radio Free Albemuth.
Okay.
It just felt all over the place. Like Vonnegut was throwing random ideas at the wall and then just used all of them instead of waiting to see what would stick.
Mm-hmm.
Like every element in this book would have been pretty weird on its own, And here they all are in the same book. And this is not a long book, I want to stress.
No,
this is
it's
under
not.
250 pages.
Yeah, it's not particularly.
And it's large print. But even with all of that, the movie still managed to do such a massive disservice to this book. I honestly wouldn't even call this an adaptation. This movie is a hate crime.
It really is. It really is.
I think they just wanted to dress two comedians in giant onesies and have them run around like very offensively imitating people with intellectual disabilities for an hour and a half. And the basic premise of the book gave them an excuse to do that.
Yes. Yep.
So the next time I see somebody say that movies were better in the 80s, I'm going to be like, explain Slapstick of Another Kind, then. This is an ugly, pitiful, reeking, rancid excuse for a film. The book wins by default.
There you go. Whew. That was the worst. The worst. All right, Katie, what's next?
Up next, we will be talking about the book Wise Guy and its 1990 film adaptation, GoodFellas.
Hey, we're doing it this time.
Yeah.
Got the right one this time.
I felt really bad, and I made sure it got on the list.
Yeah, so in case you didn't know, this is a mistake when we did The Godfather. It was actually a request
we accidentally did The Godfather.
We accidentally did The Godfather when our patron had requested GoodFellas. I am still very glad we made that mistake. I'm very happy to have finally seen The Godfather. But it is, we're doing GoodFellas. I've seen this movie a handful of times. I watched it in a high school film class, and then I've seen it once or twice since then. And it's a very good movie.
And I don't know anything about it other than that it's about the mob. So.
Yeah, I will say that from my memory, I don't think it's a very good film. I wouldn't say necessarily know if I'd put it on the same level as The Godfather in terms of like virtuosic masterpiece. Mm-hmm. It is very, very good. At least from my memory, having seen it a few times, over my lifetime. Anyways, I'm excited to return to it and see what you think about it. So we'll be doing that in a couple weeks, and in 1 week's time, we'll be back to get your feedback on Slapstick of Another Kind, and do our prequel stuff for GoodFellas. So until that time, guys, gals, non-binary pals, and everybody else,
keep reading books,
watching movies,
and keep being awesome.